The sun beat down with an unyielding fury, turning the vast, ancient canyon into a crucible of dust and stone. A lone cowboy, his face etched with the weariness of countless miles and unforgiving days, rode through this desolate expanse. His horse, a sturdy but equally jaded beast, moved with a slow, deliberate rhythm, its hooves kicking up plumes of red earth with each step. The only sound, apart from the horse's labored breathing and the creak of leather, was the faint, mocking clink of his canteen, nearly empty against the worn leather of his saddle. Every jolt of the ride seemed to amplify the hollowness within the metal flask, a constant, nagging reminder of his precarious existence in this harsh, indifferent land. His eyes, narrowed against the blinding glare, scanned the craggy formations, searching for any sign of water, any hint of respite. It was then that he saw it. A still, dark shape huddled near a cluster of sun-baked rocks. As he drew closer, the shape resolved itself into a human form, an Apache scout, unmistakably. But this was no warrior poised for battle. This was a man broken, vulnerable. The scout lay sprawled, clearly disarmed, a dark stain spreading across his buckskin tunic, testament to a fresh wound. The harsh, relentless sun beat down mercilessly upon him, offering no mercy, no shade, only an intensified torment. A primal instinct, honed by years of survival in a land where trust was a luxury and suspicion a necessity, made the cowboy's hand reflexively hover over the familiar grip of his pistol. His fingers brushed against the cold metal, a silent, almost unconscious preparation for an encounter that could turn deadly in an instant. The history between their peoples, a tapestry woven with threads of conflict, betrayal, and violence, was a heavy cloak draped over every interaction, every glance. Yet, in that profound, sun-drenched silence, broken only by the whisper of the wind through the canyon, something shifted. The scout's head, heavy with pain, turned slightly. His eyes, dark and deep, met the cowboy's. There was no aggression there, no flicker of hatred or defiance. Instead, the cowboy saw a quiet desperation, a raw, undeniable vulnerability that transcended the ingrained animosity of their tribes. It was the look of a creature cornered, wounded, and utterly alone against an overwhelming force, the desert itself. The moment stretched, suspended in the heat. The cowboy's hand slowly, almost imperceptibly, withdrew from his pistol. The scout, still and silent, seemed to hold his breath, a faint shimmer of hope, or perhaps just resignation, in his gaze. The air itself felt thick with unspoken narratives, with generations of conflict, now distilled into this single, stark encounter. The canyon walls, ancient and impassive, seemed to watch, silent witnesses to a decision teetering on the precipice of instinct and something far more complex. The cowboy swallowed, his throat dry, the almost empty canteen suddenly feeling heavier than lead. The weight of his own survival, and now, perhaps, another's, bore down upon him. He knew the desert, knew its unforgiving nature, and he knew that without aid, the Apache would not see another sunset. A choice, stark and profound, now lay before him. The cowboy dismounted from his horse, the crunch of his worn boots against the dry, parched earth echoing loudly in the immense silence of the canyon. Each step felt heavy, deliberate, a testament to the gravity of the situation that had suddenly unfolded before him. His gaze fell upon his canteen, still tethered to his saddle, its metallic sheen reflecting the brutal sun. It was almost empty, a stark reminder of his own dwindling resources and the vast, unforgiving miles of desert that lay ahead. Survival, in this desolate expanse, was a constant, fragile struggle, a delicate balance between foresight and sheer luck. As he moved, the brutal history between their peoples, a long, bloody saga etched into the very landscape, began to resurface in his mind. He recalled the countless tales of ambush, of raids, of families shattered and lives irrevocably altered. The ingrained fear and hatred passed down through generations was a visceral, almost instinctual response to the sight of an Apache. It was a narrative of conflict that had defined so much of his world, a deep-seated animosity that rarely allowed for compassion or understanding. Yet, here he stood, confronted not by an enemy in battle, but by a wounded, helpless man. The scout, still and unmoving, watched him with an intensity that was both unsettling and profoundly compelling. There was no aggression in those dark eyes, only a silent plea, a raw vulnerability that cut through the years of ingrained prejudice. He was a figure of quiet desperation, his breath shallow, his body clearly weakened by the wound and the relentless heat. The sun, a malevolent eye in the vast blue sky, beat down upon them both, intensifying the thirst that gnawed at the cowboy's own throat. Each bead of sweat that trickled down his brow was a testament to the desert's unyielding power, a power that threatened to claim them both. A profound internal struggle began to unfold within the cowboy. He considered his own survival, the arduous journey that still stretched before him, the very real possibility of succumbing to the elements himself. Every ounce of his being urged him to simply ride away, to preserve his own meager supply of water, to adhere to the brutal logic of the desert where self-preservation was the ultimate law. The miles ahead were daunting, a relentless test of endurance that offered no quarter to the weak or the overly compassionate. He had to think of himself, of his own desperate need for water to cross the arid expanse. His hand, almost unconsciously, reached for his canteen, his fingers closing around the cool metal. The decision weighed heavily upon him, a monumental burden in the quiet solitude of the canyon. It was a choice that transcended mere physical action. It was a battle between the hardened pragmatism of his existence and a nascent, almost forgotten sense of humanity. The image of the scout's desperate eyes, devoid of malice, seemed to burn into his memory, challenging the very foundations of his hardened resolve. The desert, in its silent, brutal grandeur, demanded a choice, a decision that would define not just the next few moments, but perhaps the very essence of who he was. The canteen felt impossibly heavy in his hand, each drop of its precious contents holding the weight of a life, perhaps two. The cowboy, his mind a maelstrom of conflicting thoughts and ingrained prejudices, slowly uncorked the canteen. The soft, almost imperceptible pop of the cork against the metal echoed in the profound stillness of the canyon, a sound amplified by the surrounding silence, a testament to the raw tension that hung heavy in the air. It was a sound that seemed to shatter the delicate balance of the moment, drawing an unspoken attention to the act, transforming a simple gesture into something monumental. His fingers, calloused and rough from years of hard living, fumbled slightly with the cork, a brief tremor betraying the internal struggle that raged within him. With a deliberate, almost hesitant motion, he extended the canteen towards the Apache scout. It was a gesture that defied all expectation, a silent offering that cut directly across the deep chasm of historical animosity and personal instinct. The act itself felt foreign, unnatural, a direct contradiction to everything he had been taught, everything he had lived. Yet, the canteen, a vessel of life in this parched land, was now offered, a fragile bridge built across an abyss of mistrust. The scout, still as a statue, watched the approaching canteen, his eyes, dark and piercing, searching the cowboy's face with an intensity that sought to unearth any hidden trap, any deceit masked by this unexpected kindness. Suspicion, a survival mechanism honed by generations of conflict, flickered in his gaze, warring with the desperate thirst that clearly ravaged his body. A long, agonizing moment passed, stretched taut by the unspoken questions and the profound weight of their shared circumstances. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the scout's hand, bloodied and trembling from his injury and weakness, reached out. Their hands, one weathered by sun and toil, the other stained with the crimson evidence of his ordeal, met briefly as the canteen was passed. It was a fleeting contact, yet it held the weight of centuries, a silent acknowledgement of their shared humanity in the face of the desert's brutal indifference. The metal, warm from the sun, transferred from one desperate grasp to another, a tangible symbol of a fragile, unexpected connection. The scout brought the canteen to his lips, his throat visibly working as he swallowed. He drank sparingly, each gulp a testament to his dire need, yet mindful of the precious, dwindling supply. His eyes, still fixed on the cowboy, held a complex mix of relief, gratitude, and a lingering, almost imperceptible awe. It was a moment of profound vulnerability, a raw display of human need, untainted by the usual masks of pride or animosity. The water, a simple element, became a sacrament, a shared essence of survival that transcended the barriers of language and culture. The cowboy watched him, a quiet understanding slowly dawning within him. The act of offering the water, a decision born of an inexplicable impulse, had forged a tenuous link between them. There was no need for words, no elaborate explanations. The shared drop, the silent communion over the life-giving liquid, spoke volumes more than any spoken dialogue ever could. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated humanity, stripped bare of all societal constructs and historical burdens. In the vast, indifferent expanse of the desert, two men, ostensibly enemies, had found a common ground in their shared vulnerability. After a few precious sips, the scout, with a silent, deliberate motion, returned the canteen to the cowboy. A small amount of water remained, a precious residue that felt like a testament to a newfound, fragile truce. It was enough for the cowboy to take a few sips himself, the cool liquid a welcome balm to his parched throat, a reminder of his own pressing need. But more than just physical relief, there was a profound sense of peace that settled over him, a quiet satisfaction that resonated deep within his soul. He had made a choice, not of survival in the brutal sense, but of humanity. And in that choice, he had found something unexpected, something profound. The desert, for a brief, fleeting moment, had offered a lesson not in cruelty, but in connection. The cowboy, with a newfound resolve that settled firmly in his chest, then moved to address the scout's injury. He reached for his own shirt, a garment worn and faded from countless days under the relentless sun, and with a decisive pull, tore a strip from its hem. The fabric, rough but clean, would serve as a makeshift bandage. He knelt beside the injured man, his movements careful and unhurried. There were no words exchanged, no need for them. Only the soft rustle of cloth and the gentle, deliberate actions of assistance. He cleaned the wound as best he could with the remaining drops of water from the canteen, a gesture of care that transcended the historical animosity between their peoples. The scout watched him, his gaze steady, a silent acceptance in his eyes. Once the wound was cleaned and bound, the cowboy straightened up, a sense of completion settling over him. The scout, still propped against the rock, slowly nodded his head. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried the weight of profound gratitude, a silent acknowledgement of the life-saving intervention. In that shared quiet moment, an unspoken bond formed, fragile yet undeniably present, stitched together by a shared vulnerability and a singular act of mercy. The unspoken exchange hung in the air, a testament to the power of human connection beyond words or tribal affiliations. With his task complete, the cowboy turned and walked back to his horse, a stoic figure against the vast, indifferent landscape. He gathered the reins, his movements unhurried, allowing the moment to linger, to settle into the fabric of his memory. Mounting his horse, he paused, his gaze sweeping over the desolate canyon one last time. The scout remained where he was, a solitary figure in the immensity of the desert, watching the cowboy with an intensity that spoke volumes. Their eyes met across the dusty expanse, a final silent farewell exchanged between two men whose paths had briefly, unexpectedly, intertwined. Then, with a gentle nudge of his heels, the cowboy urged his horse forward. The animal's hooves kicked up small clouds of dust as they began their slow, steady departure. The canyon walls, ancient and imposing, seemed to echo the profound silence of their encounter, holding the secret of the shared water and the mended wound. As he rode away, the scout grew smaller and smaller in his rear view, eventually fading into the shimmering heat haze. A nagging thought began to gnaw at the edges of the cowboy's mind. Had his act of mercy been a foolish gamble? In this unforgiving land, where survival often hinged on ruthless pragmatism, had he jeopardized his own safety for a stranger, an Apache no less? The brutal realities of the frontier were etched into his very being, reminding him of the constant threat, the ever-present danger that lurked in every shadow and behind every rock. He was alone, deep in hostile territory, and a moment of compassion could easily be interpreted as weakness. The desert had a way of punishing sentimentality, of grinding down any softness until only the hardest edges remained. He considered the countless tales of betrayal, of ambushes, of lives lost to misplaced trust. What if the scout, once recovered, sought vengeance for past wrongs, or simply saw him as an easy target? The thought, though unwelcome, was a persistent whisper in the back of his mind. He pushed it away, focusing instead on the rhythmic thud of his horse's hooves and the vast, empty horizon ahead. Yet, the question lingered, a quiet undercurrent beneath the surface of his consciousness. Had he made a grave error? Or had he, perhaps, sown a seed in the barren earth that might one day yield an unexpected harvest? Only time, and the unforgiving desert, would tell. He rode on, the silence of the canyon now filled with the profound weight of his choice. Months bled into more months, each one a relentless test of endurance for the cowboy. His lonely journey across the vast, indifferent desert continued, a ceaseless struggle against the brutal elements and the gnawing solitude. He faced hunger that hollowed his gut, thirst that parched his throat until it felt like sandpaper, and the unforgiving sun that beat down with an unyielding intensity, threatening to crack the very earth beneath his feet. The landscape stretched endlessly, a panorama of harsh beauty and profound danger, each day a renewed battle for survival. Despite the constant demands of his present, his mind often drifted back to the canyon, to the brief, profound connection he had forged with the Apache scout. The image of the injured man, the shared canteen, the silent nod of gratitude. These memories were etched into his consciousness, a stark contrast to the often brutal reality of his daily existence. He wondered about the scout, about his recovery, about whether he had survived the harshness of the desert. The encounter had been a fleeting moment, a ripple in the vast ocean of time, yet it held a peculiar significance, a quiet testament to a moment when humanity transcended tribal lines. Then, as fate would have it, the desert's inherent dangers materialized with terrifying suddenness. A band of outlaws, their faces grim and their intentions crueler, ambushed him in a narrow pass. He fought with the desperation of a man cornered, but the odds were insurmountable. They overwhelmed him, their blows landing with brutal efficiency. When they rode away, they left him for dead, stripped of his few possessions, his horse gone, and his body aching with fresh wounds. He lay there, sprawled on the sun-baked earth, the taste of dust and blood in his mouth. Delirium began to set in, a hazy fog creeping into his mind, blurring the edges of reality. His injuries throbbed with a searing pain, each beat of his heart sending waves of agony through his battered frame. The sun, once a distant threat, now felt like a personal tormentor, its rays scorching his skin, draining the last vestiges of strength from his body. Hope, a fragile thing in the best of times, dwindled with each passing hour, shrinking to a mere flicker in the vast darkness of his despair. Above, in the immense empty sky, the buzzards began to gather. They circled patiently, dark specks against the azure, their presence a grim prophecy. Their silent vigil was a chilling reminder of his precarious situation, a stark declaration that he was teetering on the precipice of oblivion. Each slow, deliberate turn of their wings seemed to mock his fading life, to celebrate his impending end. He could almost feel their hungry eyes upon him, patiently waiting for the desert to claim its due. A profound sense of isolation washed over him, heavier than any physical pain. He was alone, utterly and completely, in this desolate expanse, far from any help, any comfort, any familiar face. The thought that his end had truly come, that he would simply cease to be, forgotten and unmourned in this vast, unforgiving wilderness, filled him with a quiet, resigned terror. He closed his eyes, the desert wind whispering a final, mournful lullaby. His breath grew shallow, his body trembling with the last gasps of his waning strength. It seemed the harsh laws of the desert would have the final say after all. A sudden shift in the quality of light, a break in the relentless glare caused his eyelids to flutter open, heavy and reluctant. A shadow, vast and encompassing, fell over him. Not the familiar ominous silhouette of a buzzard, but something far more substantial, more human. He focused his fading vision, struggling against the encroaching darkness of unconsciousness, and saw a figure standing over him, tall and imposing, yet radiating an unexpected stillness. The sun, once his tormentor, now haloed the stranger, obscuring his features, turning him into a dark, enigmatic sentinel. As the figure knelt, the light shifted, revealing a face etched with the wisdom of the desert, a face that stirred a faint, almost forgotten memory deep within the cowboy's fevered mind. The man was an Apache warrior, his attire blending seamlessly with the rugged landscape, his presence commanding yet strangely gentle. In his hands, he carried not a weapon, but a small, worn canteen and a pouch filled with dried herbs, their earthy scent a welcome balm to the parched air. A flicker of recognition, a spark of impossible hope, ignited within the cowboy's chest. Then, as the warrior leaned closer, tending to him with a practiced, almost ritualistic care, the cowboy saw it. A distinctive, jagged scar tracing a line across the warrior's left cheekbone. It was unmistakable, a signature etched by time and adversity. It was the scout from the canyon, the man he had offered water, the man whose life he had spared months ago. A wave of disbelief, followed swiftly by an overwhelming surge of gratitude, washed over him, momentarily eclipsing the pain and delirium. The desert, which had seemed so determined to claim him, had, in a twist of fate, sent his salvation in the most unexpected form. The warrior's movements were deliberate, precise, and imbued with an ancient knowledge of healing. He poured a small amount of water from the canteen onto a piece of cloth, gently cleansing the cowboy's most grievous wounds, his touch surprisingly tender. Then, from his pouch, he extracted a handful of fragrant herbs, crushing them between his fingers before applying the poultice to the cowboy's lacerations. A cooling sensation, a blessed relief, spread through his burning skin, dulling the sharp edges of pain. Finally, the warrior uncorked the canteen, the familiar sound echoing in the stillness, and held it to the cowboy's lips. It was a mirror image of their first encounter, a silent, profound reversal of roles. The cool, life-giving liquid trickled into his mouth, each drop a testament to his miraculous rescue, a direct consequence of a choice made in a moment of unexpected compassion. He drank sparingly, as the scout had done, savoring each precious gulp, feeling strength slowly seep back into his weakened body. The Apache warrior did not speak, his eyes, dark and knowing, conveying a depth of understanding that transcended words. There was no triumph, no self-congratulation, only a quiet, unwavering commitment to the task at hand. He was simply fulfilling a debt, honoring a silent promise made under the merciless desert sun. The cowboy, too weak to utter a single word, could only meet his gaze, a silent acknowledgement of the incredible circle that had just closed. The desert, that vast and indifferent expanse, had once been a source of profound despair, a relentless adversary that sought to strip him of everything, including his life. But now, in this moment of desperate need, it had offered an unexpected salvation, a testament to the intricate, often unseen connections that bind all living things. He was no longer alone. An unseen guardian, born of a past act of mercy, had emerged from the shimmering heat, a beacon of hope in the desolate wilderness. The buzzing of the vultures faded into the background, replaced by the quiet, rhythmic sounds of healing and survival. The Apache warrior remained, a steadfast presence through the long, arduous days and nights that followed. He was a silent sentinel, tending to the cowboy's wounds with a meticulous care that bordered on reverence. There were no words exchanged between them, no lengthy conversations to fill the desolate quiet of the desert. Instead, a profound, unspoken bond began to forge itself, tempered in the crucible of shared vulnerability and mutual respect. The warrior would bring him water, not from his own small canteen, but from hidden springs known only to his people, a testament to his intimate knowledge of the unforgiving land. He would gather specific herbs, concocting poultices that soothed the burning fever and accelerated the healing of the cowboy's battered body. Each sunrise found the warrior vigilant. Each sunset saw him preparing a sparse but nourishing meal of dried meat and berries, sharing it without hesitation. As the cowboy's strength slowly returned, he watched the warrior, observing the quiet dignity in his movements, the wisdom etched into his weathered face. He saw not an enemy, but a savior, a living embodiment of the desert's unpredictable grace. The warrior's eyes, though mostly impassive, occasionally held a flicker of something akin to understanding, a recognition of the delicate threads that wove their fates together. It was a language spoken not with tongues, but with gestures, with shared glances, with the rhythmic breathing of two men connected by an extraordinary circumstance. The cowboy, once a man of action and few words, found himself reflecting deeply on the nature of humanity, on the arbitrary lines drawn between peoples, lines that seemed to dissolve under the vast, indifferent sky. Then, as subtly as he had appeared, the warrior prepared to leave. There was no elaborate farewell, no dramatic parting. One morning, as the first rays of dawn painted the eastern sky in hues of orange and purple, the warrior simply rose, gathered his sparse belongings, and nodded once, a gesture that encompassed both gratitude and finality. He turned and walked into the vastness of the desert, his silhouette quickly swallowed by the shimmering heat haze, disappearing as seamlessly as a mirage. He left behind no trace, save for the fully recovered man and the indelible mark of his kindness. The cowboy, now strong enough to stand, watched him go, a lump forming in his throat. He was fully recovered, his wounds healed, his spirit renewed. He understood, with a clarity that pierced through the desert air, the profound impact of a single act of kindness, a moment of mercy extended without expectation of reward. The memory of the shared water, a small decision made in a brutal world, resonated within him, a powerful echo that would reverberate through the rest of his life. It was a lesson learned not through hardship alone, but through the unexpected generosity of a perceived adversary. He continued his journey, but he was no longer the same man who had ridden into that canyon months ago. The desert, once a canvas for his solitary struggles, now felt like a living testament to interconnectedness. He carried with him not just the memory of his rescue, but a deeper understanding of compassion, a quiet wisdom forged in the crucible of his remarkable encounter. The world, once seen through the narrow lens of survival and suspicion, now appeared broader, richer, imbued with a hidden tapestry of reciprocal grace. He rode on, his gaze sweeping the horizon, carrying the quiet weight of redemption and a profound, enduring sense of gratitude, forever changed by the echo of a choice made in a moment of desperate thirst. The sun beat down, but it no longer felt like an enemy. It was simply the sun, shining on a world where even the smallest act of mercy could ripple through time and space, returning in the most unexpected and life-affirming ways.